I'm IngridWeissmann from the Trauma Solution, and I work as a body-mind trauma therapist. And this show that I'm going to be on, I'm so excited about, the Online Prosperity Show, Prosper's beautiful TV show. It is such a gift to be here. And I am really excited to be able to share with you what it looks like to have a trauma, because a lot of people don't realize that they have them. And it's sometimes out of our awareness. So to raise awareness and also look at where there is hope and the benefits of actually resolving them, and that it is possible. That's what I wish for you.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your premier destination for exclusive insights into our guests' transformative journeys. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we have a truly special episode lined up for you. Now, Ingrid, how are you doing today?
I am great, thank you, Prosper. So thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. I've been just waiting to have a chat with you, considering the kind of work that you do, helping people free themselves from the past so they can enjoy their future. Wouldn't that be nice for a lot of people? Because we're so held and, things that no longer serve us, and we're all holding on to those things. And it's really, really keeping people stuck forever. So I can't wait to unpack, what it is that you do and how you help people. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Prosper. Yeah. Oh. Can't wait to.
Absolutely. Now, I also like one thing, your name perfectly reflects your life's mission, Weissmann, right? It's like I think in German it translates to white man, but you don't let the literal meaning obviously affect the way you show up. You bring color and healing into people's lives by addressing deep-seated traumas. So many of us, like I say, are looking for answers. Yet all the answers are just sitting in what we're holding on, which is actually helping us, which is making us keep and remain sunk and stuck. Okay. So Ingrid is the founder of the Trauma Solution, where she's dedicated over 30 years to helping clients gently resolve distressing memories and freeing them from the lingering impacts of trauma. And her unique approach really focuses on how the body stores all of these memories and, moving beyond the traditional talk therapy to starting to facilitate profound healing. And she has a special emphasis on birth and reproductive traumas, and she's passionate about preventing intergenerational trauma by empowering individuals to reclaim their sense of safety and self. And for so many people, they don't quite realize what all this means and how it all comes together. So it's a good thing we actually have you on the show today. Now, Ingrid, how did you get involved in all of this?
A good question, Prosper. Thank you for asking. It's really interesting that you brought up about my name, Weissmann, huh? Very interesting, because it's a German name and my father is German, and this leads into how I got into this, because I think, like a lot of people, I grew up in a household that was, I suppose, influenced by trauma, in that my father, being German, he actually went through World War II as a German boy, and so you could say he's a Holocaust survivor. And that influenced the way he was a father. He did his absolute best, no doubt about that. And yet, even though a thing called post-traumatic stress wasn't even known about in those days. He definitely suffered from that. And he had his own health issues, which compounded that. So it led me to being, as a very, very sensitive child, to really shutting down and needing to protect myself in all sorts of ways from what was an unsafe household. And I think that when we do that, there's a disconnect that happens between ourselves and who we really are when we shut down parts of us from traumatic experiences at any age. And so I spent, I don't know how long, forever, since being a child, trying to find ways to actually reconnect with myself, to feel safe in the world, to trust other people, etc., etc. And it was a brilliant setup. My childhood was absolutely perfect for where I am now and what I do as work, because through many, many years of searching, I've had teachers and mentors and trainers from all over the world, and lots of dollars and time spent getting myself to the place where I am now. I'm still a work in progress. I always will be. And yet I feel extremely privileged and grateful to have had the teachers that I've had, that I can now pass on a whole system of how to actually reconnect with yourself, how to resolve traumas, how to come out of that fight-flight state and realise that there is safety within, which you can then bring out into the world. And I love doing that, absolutely love it. It's such an honour and it's so rewarding. So that's how I got into it, and that's where I'm up to so far.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for obviously opening us up to that aspect of your birth. But you did mention, having a father who had gone through that sort of PTSD, and obviously, it's a well-documented experience that a lot of those people would have gone through and things of that nature. What was he like as a person around the people that would be called his loved ones?
Mm. He was an amazing man. He was very unusual, I would say, in some ways. He had a brilliant intellect. He was studying physics before he came out he immigrated to Australia after the Second World War. And his mind was absolutely brilliant. He was an inventor. I grew up with an electric car before they were even known about. He made an electric car. He had solar power on the roof. He was a genius in lots of ways. Unfortunately, emotionally, he had a lot of stuff that was unresolved, and that was really, really understandable. He had tremendous temper. And so he could go from, 0 to 100 without any warning. So as a child, it was terrifying. And so that was in the house. On the outside, yes, that would come out sometimes. He was very frustrated because he was so ahead of his time intellectually. Like, he was working in corporate and had brilliant ideas. Because he didn't have very good tact and communication skills, English was a second language anyway, to actually convey those ideas, they didn't get very far, which is a huge shame, because he was really way ahead of his time in lots of ways. And so he was very frustrated. Bit of a sad story. He did eventually take his own life. So that was a long way down the track. But and it was a euthanasia situation, because he had a stroke and he lost his capacity to actually be intellectually robust. He was still with one hand writing letters to the editor to try and change the world, So I have great admiration for him, and he's taught me so much in life, and I'm grateful for having him as a father, even though it was certainly not easy as a child for any of our family.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that, viewpoint, because it does really paint a picture, because some people might seemingly be okay on the outside, but if they've got an unresolved past, it just keeps lingering. And most of that, as we're going to be looking at, further on, it really stifles their growth and keeps them stuck, so to speak. Now, with that being the one side of the family, what was it like with mum?
Mhm. She was a really good fit for my dad in that she was quite emotionally shut down. So she didn't notice that much that, or turned a blind eye to my father's moods. Unfortunately for me, that wasn't so much fun, and my actual birth was traumatic. I know enough about it to know that, and I didn't bond with her at all. I didn't bond with my father either because he was actually overseas at the time when I was born. So, yeah, it was a lonely childhood, I would say, and a scary childhood. And unfortunately, my mother, like a lot of mothers, she did her absolute best. She wasn't able to meet my emotional needs as a child. And again, it was a perfect setup for me going on this lifelong search of, who am I? How do I relate to myself? How do I relate to other people? And that's where it's just been a springboard. As I say, everything in my childhood was perfect for me to be absolutely thrown into personal development and professional development and finding out who the hell I was. And I've actually been able to, in more recent years, actually find one of the pinnacles of my career so far is learning how to actually help people go through their birthing experience, not in like the old fashioned 1980s rebirthing style, which was potentially traumatic itself, but in a way that is a whole different level of experience to reconnect with a positive birthing experience and then bond with their parent if they can, otherwise themselves. And that experience, because birthing is so pivotal and such a foundational experience for all of us, the way we come into the world is so significant and has ramifications for potentially the rest of our life. That for me to go through that experience and really appreciate my mother to the extent where I've bonded as best as I can with her now. It's not perfect. However, the bond that I now have with myself is what was missing. It's like I now feel compassion for my baby self, if you like, and I reconnect with her every single day. And that has given me as good a bonding experience as I possibly could have hoped for. And that's what I was looking for. And that's what I see a lot of clients don't have. We come into the world in all sorts of ways that are not necessarily feeling safe or feeling supported or feeling bonded. And there are ways to actually sort that out as an adult. And it's just, for me, it's the ultimate, to have that deep love connection again with another human being, even if it's yourself, is actually worth doing. A lot of people actually rebond with their parents, and it's so worth doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you so much again. I mean, obviously every turn that we're turning in this episode is just really opening up a few layers that so many people are going to relate with and resonate with so much. Now, as humans, we're societal creatures and we're born within some sort of society or clan, which we're obviously, as babies, we're going to be looking to the protection of our elders from whatever will be coming through. Now, I can only imagine if that was what was going on as a baby, you would have been stressing and obviously wanting that love, bond, and care from, the ones that are supposed to be in your care. Now, would that have just been a scenario of your own family in that particular sense, or do you see this happening and being experienced by so many other people based on the timeline and what people were experiencing then, because it was all about work and going back to work and looking after the family and things and putting food on the table?
Absolutely. Yeah. Great question again, Prosper. And yes, the answer is yes. It is. It's almost an epidemic. It's not completely, given that all births will be traumatic at all, not at all. And yet, unfortunately, because so many of us have had distressing or traumatic experiences that have impacted us and not been resolved. And I'm talking quite broadly. It's any experience that leaves a lasting negative impact. It could be not getting our needs met as a child. It could be having an accident, falling off a horse as a child. It could be being bullied. It could be being fired, from a divorce, any kind of loss. There's lots and lots of experiences that really are intense for us, and they can leave that lasting negative impact unless it's resolved. It's sort of like having an app or a computer program playing in the background that we may not even be aware of, but it's draining us and in a way distracting us, because our body and our mind actually want to resolve things. And when we don't know how to, or we don't even know that it's there, or we have no mechanism or strategy for actually handling that situation, then we have these kind of, layers that build up. And so when a mother is giving birth, for example, if she has a lot of unresolved stuff, then it may impact how much she can be present for that child. Like for my mother, for example, she had a lot of stuff going on. Her husband was actually overseas because his mother, my grandmother, had just died 6 days before I was born. And so she was stressed, 2 young boys already, and she's about to give birth to another child. And so that's nobody's fault. It's the fact that she was in shock herself. She was not able to be present for my birth in a way that, I needed to bond with her. And as I say, no one's fault at all. It is purely that circumstances just happened, and that can be the case. It's just circumstances, or it can be that in her case, she had a tendency to emotionally shut down anyway, as I mentioned before. Yeah. So when all of us, any of us, end up in a situation being born, and our first experience of the world is, wow, people aren't here. It's like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I'd be nice and cozy in this lovely warm space, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, who's here for me? And where's the care that I thought was going to be there? And it can be quite a shock for the newborn. And then, of course, there can be all sorts of things that happen where they may get separated from their mother, they may get injected, they may get slapped on the bum, they may get all sorts of experiences that are less than pleasant. And it used to be thought that children had absolutely no feeling or no awareness. It's completely the wrong way. It's actually, they have a lot more. It's been proven now. They have a lot more awareness and a lot more sense of pain and feeling. And so those first impressions are like trauma. And fast forward lots of years, and you've got the potential for ADHD, for all sorts of, panic attacks, anxiety, etc., because those foundational experiences, as I say, can set up a pattern. It's like when someone is not there for you initially, your trust in other people and the world can be affected, and it needs to be regained and rebuilt somehow and repaired. Say somebody comes out really like having to be induced, for example, and they can then have that impression that they actually need a hand all of the time, that they can't actually initiate things themselves, that they need someone else to rescue them. These are like patterns that can be set up completely unconsciously. We're not conscious of our memories for quite some years, and yet it's like our body remembers, which is why I mentioned about the body storing memories. And that's the level that we need to go to. It's not up here. It's whole person stuff of actually re-experiencing that in a more positive way, fixing up what needs fixed up, what needs fixing up, and then going forwards from there. It means from then on, you no longer have to be living out that pattern. And yes, those kinds of experiences are really, really common. The state that I live in is New South Wales, and there's been a study done by the Health Commission less than a year ago on birth traumas. 1 in 3 births are now classified as traumatic. 1 in 2 if you actually count both parents. So in other words, fathers are part of the traumatized entourage that's going on there. There's all sorts of horrific kind of stats that are out there. 1 in 10 births or mothers have experienced what they consider abusive treatment going through their birthing period. So, you know, there's lots going on that's not ideal, and the good news is that there are things that we can do about it when people actually acknowledge that all is not well, and when they listen to the signs and symptoms and go, surely there's got to be a better way, and that's when something can be done about it.
Absolutely. I mean, you taking us through all of that just really gets somebody to maybe stop and have a think. Maybe you might not personally remember your own birth, but for somebody who might have had an opportunity to have kids, you would start thinking, and I was going through that as well, and I'm just I don't know where to place that. And this, it's a lot. So is this now, like you said, it manifests into so many other things later on? Is it why sometimes some people feel lost and disconnected from others, and maybe yourself, especially because that whole process hasn't been amicable and it's stored in your memory so much that you just don't feel like you belong, because like you said, it's like an app that's playing at the back, which is draining your phone's battery. Sometimes, you know, there's that app that's just draining battery and you don't realize which one it is.
Yeah, no, well said. That's a really good way to put it, Prosper. It absolutely is like that. And it's an interesting thing because often people aren't aware that how they feel is potentially a result of a trauma. And it sometimes is obvious that, you know, okay, when I was 9, I fell off a horse, and that's created this, you know, fear of horses, or this being jarred in some way, watching out for danger, etc., etc. Sometimes it's obvious like that. Other times it is not obvious. And often when I start working with a client, there'll be things that come up that are sort of lots of little, we call them little T traumas. Lots of times when they were told to be quiet, when their feelings were actually really important to them, or they were denied to go to somebody's birthday party, or whatever. There's lots and lots of little experiences that add up as we are little people. Between 0 and 7 years old are really, really formative years. We end up with a lot of what end up being beliefs about ourselves, about other people, about the world, which are made from that perspective. And yet the brain kind of goes, oh, okay, that's the way things are, so I'll just run on those programs. And they don't always fit reality, and yet for us, they're real. They don't fit external reality, but because we are running that pattern or that program, we'll attract it, we'll find it. And it's sort of like, creating evidence in our own lives of, oh, okay, I wasn't a good girl, so, or I wasn't good enough in some way. And so later on, we'll attract evidence that reinforces that negative belief of like, oh, I'm not good enough again and again and again. Yeah, we might find a partner that tells us that. Or we might fail at something and then we tell ourselves that, because there's patterns that unconsciously play out until we resolve them. And then moving forwards, we don't have to attract those kinds of reinforcing experiences. It gets quite subtle. And yes, those are the clues. Where life isn't working, there can be some history that needs to be cleared up. So the signs that might show up and manifest, as you were saying, can be all sorts of things where life or relationships or work or career are just not running smoothly and working so well, or there's a similar pattern that's being replayed. It's like when people have relationships and they go, oh my goodness, this person ends up being exactly the same, but they're in a different body or different clothes. And it's like they have repeat relationships with somebody that has the same characteristics they don't realize to start with, but it ends up being like that. It's like when they do personal development work to sort out what is their belief and their previous experience in their past history that has actually attracted the same person, when they sort that out, they can attract someone new. It's no longer a fit with the old pattern. So yeah, it can be that, it can be failed ventures in careers that, maybe some people actually don't go for promotions or they don't take this risk when actually their business success might depend on it, an expansion, but they don't feel good enough to receive or deserve or whatever. So yeah, all those kinds of subtle things, they may not recognize that those are symptoms of negative beliefs which are formed at the time of trauma, because they go together. Quite often negative beliefs are formed at the time of a traumatic experience between 0 and 7. So when we actually sort those out, that's when things can flow a whole lot better.
Ingrid, I mean, obviously, this presents a lot, especially in the day-to-day life that we live. One of my girls is 6, who still is in that bracket that you're talking about there.
Beautiful.
If she had her way, she'd be having a bowl of candy or M&Ms for breakfast every day, and you can only imagine anything else that ensues pretty much after that. And the parents are only just there to at least, I don't know, maybe save money from the dentist. I don't know, or maybe at least lead them to a path that is a-okay. But from what you're saying, that denial, that no, that stop, that confrontation in and of itself can then escalate later on in life, and they don't quite realize that it was that one particular morning when they shouldn't have had candy for breakfast.
Absolutely, yes. A great point. And thank you for bringing that up, Prosper. Absolutely. And how gorgeous. I've seen photos of your girls. They're beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Yeah. Okay, so caveat. Parents are absolutely there to oversee the well-being of the child. Yes? Even when the child doesn't realize they need that boundary put in place. Yeah. So most definitely it's the adult that has the last say. Where there are, I suppose, choices to be made, and the child is maybe not given a choice or makes a choice and then it's taken away from them, for example. So, say, for example, that situation you brought up, there's a couple of ways to do that. There can be an explanation that, from an adult perspective, this is not what the rest of us are doing. That actually, a whole box of M&Ms is not such a good idea for breakfast. Other things like, say, for example, she wants to wear a green sock and a pink sock to school. Yeah, that's her choice. It's like, well, okay, why not? That's not going to be harmful for self or others. And so allowing her to have that choice means that she then actually can experience the consequences of her actions. And she then learns from that experience what those are. She might go to school and somebody says, "Oh, you've got odd socks." And that will be a consequence of the action. And she may then decide the next day, I'm going to wear matching socks again. Yeah, because it's allowed her to experiment and really get feedback from the world. With the M&Ms, I would suggest that there actually probably needs to be an adult limit, like, how about whatever, you can have one. So it's not denial completely, and honouring her choice that that's what she would like. And then the rest of it's going to be what the rest of us are eating. Just ideas.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's when children are really either made to be exactly like their parents and don't have choice about things, or they're just so not listened to. And there's no strategy for the parents to actually bring in choice making from a reasonable age, and actually learning through the decisions that they make in their life. That's confidence building, that's character building, that's all sorts of things where they actually feel they can try things, they're good enough to try things and learn from their own actions. Probably off on a bit of a tangent, but
Well, I
yeah.
mean, obviously, those are the kind of questions that people might also be having, thinking, oh, so, where does it start? Where does it stop? And things of that nature. But
Yeah.
you obviously would have gone on and learned all of this. This wasn't just only particularly from the experience, right? I mean, your journey has really taken you across the globe. You're learning from various teachers and learning from various traditions and cultures, because that is also very important. Because where I come from, there's certain level, certain way that, people are expected to show up in the world. And somehow we always want that to trickle down to our families and things of that nature. And you would have also maybe experienced that from having somebody who came in from another country, coming into a whole different culture, and that sort of dynamic is now present with quite a lot of people. What was your experience when you were going across the globe, and how does that now sort of influence the way you also help others find resolve
Mm.
in their way of life?
Yeah, I feel very grateful and glad that I have had exposure to all walks of life, you could say, and different cultures. I sought that out because, again, searching for self and finding that the search for self took me to various different corners of places. Like, for example, as a what 21-year-old, I think I ended up in the middle of India, landed in a festival where there were, I think, 60,000 people, and I landed right in the middle of the Indian sort of entourage of hustle and bustle and all the rest of it. And I thought to myself at the time, if I can handle this, I can handle anything. You know, it was really a very big kind of culture shock. And I'm very pleased that I went through that. And what it did, it just opened up my mind that it doesn't matter what color our skin is or our financial background or our status currently. We're all the same right inside. And what matters is how connected are we with ourselves. And tragically, traumatic experiences disconnect us from ourselves. And that's part of the whole problem as to why people feel so lost when they've been through traumatic experiences. There's a disconnection not only from themselves, but it's also much harder to connect with other people when we don't have that with ourselves. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Absolutely. Oh, I mean, obviously, because, you know, your travels and you having to see all of that, but also that raises a question where those cultural differences create language barriers or language ways of understanding, or, you know, because I visually believe if you can't name it, you can't tame it. So some people might not understand just because the words don't, you know, they're not present in their language. And what you say is there's a world where people can feel understood, feel safe, feel supported. And, you know, that is actually possible for a lot of people, yet there's no reference or cultural reference as to how would you see it when you arrive. That's sort of, you know, from your experience and exposure, you know, how do you address something like that?
It takes a bit of work. It really does. The work that I do is not superficial. It's not about, you know, what do I say in this kind of situation so much, although I do cover some of that. It is more what's going on inside me in my quiet times. What's the voice or the voices that I have running through my head? Are they telling me still that I'm not good enough? And that's an old voice from the past, rather than saying, have a go, you know, try this, experiment this, which I was just talking about a moment ago for your 6-year-old daughter, you know, go for it, you know. There's all sorts of limitations that we unfortunately bring with us, you know, either from our birth experience, sometimes from actually our time in utero. We pick up experiences there as well. And our ancestors, etc. There's an inheritance line of, as you said, the culture that comes down through the generations. And all of this kind of add up to how I am with myself and how I experience other people in my world. And when there are things going on that just are, like you said right at the beginning, feeling stuck or blocked in some way, that, you know, I want this relationship and it's not happening, or I want this success in my business and it's not happening. You know, I'm frequently working with people, for example, a young lady that was working in the health fields, and she really wanted a successful business, and yet she knew something was holding her back. What turned out is that she hadn't grieved the loss of her older brother when she was a teenager. It's like that situation there. I know it sounds like they're disconnected, but actually no. Every experience that we have, as I said, is like layers on who we are and how we operate in the world. And so around that sort of experience, there was family interference where she was actually not allowed to go to his funeral. There was all sorts of messages that she got, and that memory had stayed stuck for her in her body, in her mind, and it was holding her back from being successful, trying. That she thought that she was not good enough in some way, that she was going to be unsuccessful in her business. So we sorted that out. We went through that traumatic memory and very gently allowed her body to process it, so that she'd completely forgotten about that memory altogether, by the way, and she had no idea that that was connected to what she came to see me about. And yet when we started working, that's what came forth from her body as a memory that it was holding. Yeah. The body holds clues. And so that was the memory that it wanted to offload in order for everything to flow well, that she could then succeed in her business. It's really quite uncanny, all the little messages that are in seemingly unrelated events, that actually it was very related to her ability to step out in the world and be successful. And yeah, she's gone and done that.
Absolutely. And it's just quite, once you release all of that, it's like that helium balloon that is being held by, the weight. And once you let it go, there's no stopping you, pretty much. But some of this is intergenerational, like if you would look at it, you're coming from a place where the documented past of your dad might then have been, trickled down to where you're at right now. And I wouldn't know, because our history is not really documented. For all I know, my great-grandfather would have been sitting butt naked on a zebra with a bone sticking through his nose, or whatever, he's yodeling through the village and just causing trouble in there, or whatever. What if you don't know? How do you investigate this?
Yeah, it's a question I get asked all the time, and it's a very understandable question, because it's not conscious memory. It's what's called implicit memory. It's our body actually remembers. Our body, when we are able to investigate that in a non-logic based way, our body remembers all of the experiences we've gone through. So this is why I don't do a lot of conventional talk therapy, because that is working with 5% of our brain, which is the conscious memory. 95% of our brain stores unconscious or subconscious memories. And so that is where a lot of our programming, our limiting beliefs, our patterns come from. And I'll just put in brackets here, when we have a traumatic memory, then quite often if it is an intensely distressing experience, then our brain will actually store it, not in our conscious memory usually, but in our unconscious memory, and kind of like tuck it away because, that was distressing and I don't want to think about it. And it's stored. I'm putting this in very simplistic terms just to try and explain it, but it's quite a process. And so those kinds of memories stay within us until we are able to bring them to the light. And the way I do that is in a kind of an indirect way, so that it is not re-traumatizing. Tragically and unfortunately, talking about stuff, if you do remember a traumatic memory and you talk about it, what can actually happen is it brings it all up to the surface and is re-traumatizing. You're basically reliving it without processing it, without resolving it in any way, shape or form. I've had lots of people that have actually spent years talking about their traumas. They come and see me and it's like, it just happened yesterday. Yeah, the conscious mind is not a very good tool for actually resolving traumas, because they're stored in the 95% of our brain and our bodies, and it's not accessible. You know, yes, you can rehash it, but it doesn't process it. So, yeah, I've probably gone off track again a little bit
No,
with
I
your question.
absolutely love that because Ingrid, I mean, obviously we were talking about M&Ms, right? And we
Yeah.
were talking about whatever food that we eat. I think the body is just a magnificent piece of technology because you eat a banana today and it manifests as fingernails. You know what I mean? It's just, and you never know what else you are adding onto it and things of that nature. So my question to you now is, considering that when somebody's going through this exercise and process with you, obviously they're bringing things that even they haven't known they have experienced, and it's such a personal endeavor for them to go through this because they're being vulnerable at a level that they themselves have never experienced and comprehended. Now, there has to be something that has to happen in order for you to build trust with that sort of person, in order for them to, even for their body to realize, oh, we've been caught out here. Okay, we might as well fess up because I don't think if it was easy, you know, even a teacher would just scare the trauma out of you or something like that. I don't know how you do it. Maybe you can explain to us this process
Yeah.
because some people might just feel
Okay.
like, whoa, if I haven't come across this, you know, I've sneezed sometimes and I've seen certain things in the air and I've thought, yeah, that's the trauma leaving me. But if you're saying some of this stuff is skin deep, that's a part of us we are carrying, we don't even know exists.
I would
That
actually
scares
say
me.
it's okay. Okay. Yeah. And I get it that it's scary. I'd actually say even more than skin deep, it is cellular deep. Yeah. In that we are carrying all this stuff around inside us anyway, whether we know it or acknowledge it or choose to investigate it or not, it is there. It's like one of my trainers said, if you don't want to open up a can of worms, then you're going to carry the can of worms around with you inside you forever. And there's, you know, that's a good sort of analogy. The really interesting thing is that our bodies and our minds are on our side. They so want to resolve things. They don't want to have this app that's running in the background draining their battery or distracting them or causing overwhelm or causing anxiety for no known reason or no obvious reason. They don't want that. They actually want to resolve. The brain and the body are very much sort of attuned to how they can feel better. And I guide people to that point where once they dip a toe in and go, oh my God, actually, it's less scary than what I've been carrying around forever and trying to run away from unconsciously, then what happens is their bodies just kind of jump on board to say, oh, there's this memory as well. Can I go now? Or, you know, can this memory go now next? It's like there's there's a whole team of memories that want to suddenly be resolved because they realize it's safe to do so and that it's not overwhelming. They're not going to die if they feel something. We've all been taught that. Yeah, if you feel something, you're going to die. You know, emotions, they're kind of this messy, hard truth, and we just want to shove them under the carpet because they're bothersome. We want the intellect to rule. Emotions are too tricky. I say no. Emotions are gold. They are part of us, this incredible part of us that is giving us all sorts of clues about what's not right in our life. And, you know, this person feels safe, this person doesn't. There's all sorts of magic in not just our bodies, but also in our emotions. And so the thing that I say to people when they are really scared, it's like, like kids get scared of things in the night. They imagine there's a dragon on the wall or something like that. But when they actually stop and have a look at it, they go, oh, that's the shadow from that tree out there. And that's all it is. It's like our running away from makes things feel worse than when we stop and go, how do I get to know those parts of me that are trying to tell me things through my behavior, through my feelings, through my thoughts? What if we just turn that around 180 degrees and go, what are you trying to tell me? And become best friends with our emotions and our bodies and our minds, rather than trying to run away and ignore it all. Because I can absolutely honestly say that doesn't work. In that, trying to run away and ignore stuff doesn't make it go away. You just carry it on forever. So yeah, from the outside it looks scary, but actually our body knows and is on board and wants to help us to resolve and release. It just needs some guidance, and that's how I see my job. Actually the body and the mind do it. I just guide people to do it and give them the right steps. So, and as I was saying before, where I went a little bit off track with your previous question, the implicit memory in our bodies is such that the right memories come up for resolution at the right times. And I have incredible trust in that. The body will only show us what the next right memory is to resolve. And so it's not like everything has to get laid bare. No, it's very systematic, it's very safe, it's very step by step, and it's also very detached. If you're talking about things and blah, 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 this is what happened to me, you're in it. And it's really painful. And a lot of people have that impression of therapy because I get it. I've been there, done it myself. It's really painful. I'm not a fan of re-traumatizing people. I go to a lot of lengths to be as non-re-traumatizing as possible. You don't have to re-experience the trauma in order to resolve it. There are indirect ways to allow those memories, the right ones, to come forwards at the right time, and we resolve them. It's almost like some people find their sessions a bit like a meditation. Sounds crazy. We're resolving traumas in this kind of relaxed, meditative kind of way. So yeah, it's a different approach.
Like that. It's like, and thank you so much for that, because it's like when you're traveling with like a low cost airline, they give you an allocation for baggage, or luggage, and you'll be sitting there and you're given that little contraption to measure and what the weight is. If you so happen to go past by 1 gram or 1 kilogram, you literally are going to be paying for all the empty seats on that flight leg and things like that. So it actually costs us a lot to travel heavy with this unwanted baggage that we're carrying around in the form of unresolved trauma. And that's what I'm understanding from you. So my brain just works in a whole different way. Maybe that's something that also needs to be looked into. But for somebody who's listening right now and they're probably a little bit hesitant and they're sold onto what can be done, but they just maybe hesitant to confront their past traumas, not knowing what they will come across. What would be maybe the easiest way to maybe get in touch or start their path with the work that you're doing, just so they can see maybe a little bit of you in action without the total recourse of it all?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really one for trying before you buy. And so I have various things. A really great way, if there are birth or reproductive traumas, is to jump on the next month's free webinar that I have, which is called Heal Reproductive Traumas and Find Freedom. And that is freedom within yourself, and it's also freedom from the past. So it's a double meaning there, because that's a lovely way to get an overview of what's possible, of how I approach things from a systematic point of view, and also I give a lot of case studies of situations that people can relate to, where there's, as I say, there's a lot of this around, and there's a lot of lovely success stories. It doesn't have to be this unpacking. This is an old-fashioned point of view that, you know, you have to unpack your whole self and feel extremely vulnerable, and that is tragic, and it has been reality, unfortunately. There are much more modern ways to do things. It's not to say that talk therapies don't have their value. Absolutely. At the right time, for the right person, they are absolutely worth their weight in gold. And yet sometimes for traumas, they can be re-traumatizing. And so what I suggest to people is that they come with a really open mind, and that be prepared to, you know, go left field, because I don't use logic-based therapies. I'm using body-mind therapies, energy psychology. It's not all logic-based. And the trust that I have in people's bodies, as you mentioned before, like, they're incredible, and they are absolutely on our side. We just need to give them the right tools and the right space and the right support in order to do their thing of releasing and processing and coming out the other side to actually feel incredible relief that is so worth it.
Absolutely. Now, what would be the best way for people to jump onto next month's webinar? Is there a link that you have that we can use in the show notes?
Sure. thetraumasolution.com.au/birth. That is the relevant page on my website, and there's a big button up the top and down the bottom that says next webinar. Click here to register, and that will take them to a landing page where they can read more about it and actually register there.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for opening that, you know, portal for people to really explore what it is that, you know, might be holding them back and keeping them stuck. Now, Ingrid, obviously, with what you've said, you know, somebody like me I've got my smarty pants on today, and I'm just thinking, you know what? If this thing is stuck in my body, I could go and lift heavy things, or I could go sweat it out in a sauna, or I could just go run and lose weight. And maybe in the process, that might also just release whatever is being stored in my body, and we can all move on, you know? Why would somebody really need to take this seriously?
Because unresolved trauma has all sorts of ramifications, right through to physical health issues. As we age, it shows up. So, you know, all these heart attacks that happen to men in their mid-50s, their heart is broken in some way. Yeah, it's not always the case. I'm putting it as a general term. You know, there's a lot of sadness and grief that hasn't been processed, and it has nowhere else to go, so it stops in the heart, and it stops the heart. Doesn't always have to be that way, right? I'm generalizing, please know that. Things like cancers, you know, when we actually don't address our feeling of not good enough, then our bodies can start attacking ourselves. Again, I'm generalizing. There's all sorts of different reasons for cancer. There are some cancers that are very emotionally based. And it's like when you don't allow the emotions to be acknowledged and to be free in some way within us, then when they're not part of our life, then they can build up and eat us away, basically. It's terribly sad, the emotionally based traumas, cancers. So all sorts of things like that. As I say, the body, carries stuff and stores stuff, and it will manifest stuff. When we don't listen to our feelings for long enough, it will manifest as a physical disease. So that's a bit of an incentive. Otherwise, there's a whole lot of in between things that where life could actually be a whole lot better. You know, I've got a squillion examples of where people have resolved things before they've had to get into old age or whatever. Mind you, I'm working with a 25-year-old that's got lots of physical problems already. Yeah, it can happen at any age. But there are where life quality can be a whole lot better. For example, where say someone has been through a traumatic birth or hasn't been able to conceive, for example, and that is causing them to fear another pregnancy or fear their first pregnancy. Maybe they've got a history of some reproductive abuse of some sort. And so they will actually curtail their enjoyment of life because of this unresolved past. And it doesn't have to be that way. That's just one example in that area. Somebody, for example, that I worked with recently inherited a fear of being financially insecure. Their culture was one that meant that if you didn't have enough resources to have a child, then it was a big deal. And her parents actually were considering terminating the pregnancy when they found out that they were pregnant. And we were able to trace the feelings back that her body was showing us. And she actually inherited this fear of not having enough money and also that she didn't deserve to be here. When we resolved that for her, within a month, she actually had money that she could do a couple of professional development courses. She's in the medical industry. Professional development courses she didn't think she had money for, and she also took a relative overseas that she had been promising to do but didn't know how she was going to do it. So this stuff works, and it's quality of life.
Now, obviously, I mean, there's so much that we can uncover. This is people's lives that we're talking about and things of that nature. So it's one of those things. If you hurt yourself, you scrape your knee or something, you could put a Band-Aid on, and that's like the typical first aid. Or if you start having you can't breathe or something like that, there's certain things that you could do just to resuscitate yourself or the person who is getting that shortness of breath and things of that nature. Is there any first aid to this once somebody has realized that there's a possibility that stuff needs to be done, and now that we've ignited that maybe their body was paying attention and now it's like, we're here, resolve us? Is there something that somebody can maybe initially start working on, maybe breathe slowly or run around the block 3 times? Is there some sort of a ritual maybe that you do yourself that people might maybe take into cognizance as they make their way to the next webinar?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for asking that. That's good self-care for people listening. Yes, one of the things that happens when we have a big experience is that we will go, we go into fright and we take a deep breath in and we stop breathing. And it's just an automatic autonomic nervous system shock response. And so what happens at that moment is that our diaphragm, this big flap of muscle underneath our lungs, it gets stuck like this. And then our breathing is more shallow, and that changes the whole physiology of our brain chemistry. So a really, really great hack for coming out of the shock response is to breathe deeply and let the diaphragm expand with the full capacity of the lungs, and then it pops back up as you breathe out again. So actually getting the diaphragm unlocked is a really, really great thing to do to cut down on the level of shock. And the way that you can check that that is happening is you place a hand on your belly or two hands on your belly. And when the diaphragm is expanding as it needs to be and should be doing, what happens is the abdominal organs need somewhere to go. So they just poke out a little bit. And you know that if your hands are expanding and contracting a little bit, then you know that you've got the diaphragm moving and you're coming at least some extent out of the shock or fight flight experience to a certain extent. So there's a lot of physiology and, brain chemistry that can work in our favor when we are taking those deep breaths. So as you said, deep breaths, really great idea. That's a good way to check, is hands on the belly and make sure the belly is breathing out and in. If we think we're taking a deep breath and the hands are not moving, we're not taking a deep breath. We haven't gone deep enough to get that diaphragm actually collapsing and then going back up into its dome shape again. A second hack I will give as well is any time that there's a feeling of overwhelm or a panic attack or shock or anything like that, when things come to realization, although we're all pretty good at storing them and shutting them down, but if that's not the case, there's a little acupressure point, which I'll show you, in between these two knuckles, the fourth and the fifth knuckle. You go in a little V about 1 centimetre down in that bone, in between those two bones there. You can just, if you like, tap or press or just hold that point, and you can pulse it a little bit like it's a heartbeat, or a slow one. Just stimulate that very, very gently. And within about 30 seconds, it will help to bring you out of a panic attack or a shock response. Okay? Maybe deep breathe as well. That would be good.
Absolutely. I think now, if people just see me going like this, then they know I'm recalibrating and reactivating. And wow. Okay. Thank you so much. Now, Ingrid, I know we could go on and talk about these things, because these are, the issues that really affect a lot of people, and so many of these traumas go unresolved just simply because people have no idea of their actual presence and things like that. But when we started this conversation today, you introduced us to Ingrid, who keeps going back to younger or baby Ingrid or younger Ingrid, who still needs that love, TLC, and care. And you went on a mission to self-discover yourself and things of that nature. I've got a question, Ingrid. Did you find what you were looking for?
In the re-experiencing of my birth and the bonding that I've done with myself, my baby self, absolutely. For me, love is the ultimate feeling. It's always been that way, and unconditional love. And to now have that experiencing being generated from within me on a daily basis, it's the pinnacle for me. And I wish that for everybody. And it's what I see is missing in a lot of people. And yeah, I like to relieve suffering wherever I can. So whoever walks through my door, then as close as I can get them to that point, whenever they're ready for that, then I celebrate.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously, if you can help somebody resolve their past experiences without being re-traumatized, and then change the limiting beliefs of the things that were stopping them, obviously their future can improve from just that alone. Now, Ingrid, I don't know if you know, but I think you're literally giving people back to themselves.
It would be lovely to be able to do that, and that's my aim.
Wow. No,
Mm.
I can't thank you enough for, first of all, the work that you're doing and the journey that you have undertaken and helping people regain their own strength, because they don't necessarily need to go anywhere else to find what's already there inside of them. And all you're just doing is reshaping and showing them what's possible. Because if the past can keep you stuck forever, can you imagine what it's like to free yourself and the impact that you can actually give? Because I obviously believe you can't climb the ladder of success with your hands full. But if you do let go of whatever and you can hold rung and rung, and when you're there, you just send the elevator down for all the other ones to rise up. And can you imagine the world that we would have created just by doing that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They will have a chest full of successory badges. I love your successories. And when people are in trauma state, they can't even see their successes. You know, they don't deserve them, they don't acknowledge them, etc. And it's like, yeah, to actually acknowledge and be able to move forwards freer and embrace the success that they can bring and they do bring to their lives, then yay. You know, I love celebrating people, and the thing that stops a lot of people is fear. And when they realize that it's nowhere near as scary as they think it's going to be, or that, you know, they've been told that it will be, then it's just that shadow of the tree on the bedroom wall that our brain has perceived it as danger, and it's actually not. Then yeah, it's like there's a whole world awaits them, and they can fill up their chest full of successory badges, and I'll applaud them.
The successor is, oh, I love that term a lot, because wherever you go, you're just picking up all these little accessories for the success. But Ingrid, I think your dedication to healing and also the innovative approaches that you're bringing are truly inspiring. And for those that are watching right now, if you want to learn more or maybe to book a session with Ingrid, visit thetraumasolution.com.au, and I will be putting all the links to next month's webinar in there. But before we wrap up, I think I just need to ask our viewers here, have you or someone that you know experienced the ripple effects of unresolved trauma? Because half of the time, fish don't see the water that they're swimming in, and neither can human beings see the air that we're breathing. So many of us are just walking around not realizing that we're holding on to things that no longer serve us. And if you can free yourself from the past, you can literally enjoy your future. So just type in the comments below if maybe you know someone, or if it's yourself, that has been walking around traveling heavy, because as we have established, it is expensive to travel heavy, especially if you're flying with Jetstar. So thank you so much, for joining us on this enlightening episode of the Online Prosperity Show. And be sure to tune in next time, where we're going to be exploring ideas to help you lead a happier and more fulfilling life. And if you found value in today's discussion, just share this episode with somebody who could benefit more. They might not realize that what they're going through in life, maybe they feel disconnected, maybe they have voices and stories in their head and they always feel not good enough, and they have similar themes like what Ingrid has said that just continuously recur. That might be the trauma that's just attracting all of those things, and they are running an app which is just draining their battery. So if you don't want people to come over to you and borrow your charger all the time, this should be the podcast that you send to them. Right. And if somebody has shared this with you, be sure to just thank them and subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show. And one last thing, remember, your journey to prosperity starts with one single step. Maybe releasing that trauma could be the first thing you need to do right now. Bye for now.